Hello everyone, I'm Vincent White. I'm an employment attorney, and today we're talking about whether or not your employer can require you to get a vaccine. We're not going to specify a vaccine for what. We're just going to say in general, can your private employer, so your non-government employer, can they require you to get some vaccine, a vaccine? And judging by how riled up everyone got in the video, which I explained that yes, your private employer can almost certainly require you to wear a mask in the workplace, barring a few very minor, very small, very complex exemptions. Judging by the response to that video, I'm going to assume you're going to be a little salty about this one too. In that video, I think somebody in the comments actually said that I drink baby blood. Like, they were so angry that I had to tell them that the law probably allows your employer to require you to wear a mask, that they then accused me of harming babies and consuming their blood. I didn't make the laws, folks. I didn't. And all the people in that video who said they were going to sue about the masks, you didn't. None of you did. And it didn't go anywhere if you did, because it's nonsense and you're full of stuff. How about that? I got to say, before we get started, before you all hate me even more, I actually hate this suit, but I think it looks pretty good on camera. I think, listen, terrible suit. Great on camera. Who knew? Okay, so can your employer make you wear a vaccine? Make you take a vaccine? Probably. Yeah, your private employer probably can. Employers have been doing that, especially hospitals, but also some schools, and a number of other businesses as well. They require, in some cases, a flu vaccine, the flu shot. They require a variety of vaccines, right? A lot of jobs that work with people who might be immune compromised require it. There's a whole passel of jobs that do require vaccinations to work there. And immediately I know a bunch of the same crowd that had their little laminated cards with the masks, right? They wanted to go to businesses and say, I got this laminated card off the internet. I don't have to wear the mask. Yeah, that wasn't real then. It didn't work out for you then. It's not real now. It was always nonsense. You paid like $30 to look like a moron. This is what it is. I can't believe people called me about that. I mean, who are these people? And listen, I might even agree with you. I don't think the government, I'm going to lose the other half of my audience now. I don't think the government should be able to require you to get a vaccine, especially not a rush vaccine. That's, I think, a very personal choice. And the government maybe shouldn't be in that position, right? I don't know what I think about that. I think there's certainly protections against that sort of government overreach or government behavior, depending on who you ask, right? But again, can't stress enough that a private employer is not the government, because if you don't like what your private employer is doing, you can just leave. You can say, I don't want to work for you anymore. See you later. Not doing that, right? And they can either say, oh, come back. We'll do what you want. Or they can say, see ya. It's their choice. You have choices, they have choices. With the government, things are a little bit different. It's not always so easy to just get away from the government, or to tell the government, no thanks, I'm not going to do that, right? So there's very different considerations. A private employer is not the same as the government. We're not dealing with the government here, because I'm an employment attorney and not working for the ACLU, right? So let's keep this narrow. Let's actually talk about just this topic, which is, can your private employer require you to get a vaccine? So far we've said, yeah, probably yes. Now there are a couple of exemptions. Again, not that laminated card that says you have the magical disability that means, no vaccines or no masks, whatever. That doesn't count. But there are a couple of religions, a couple of long-standing faiths in which some of the core tenets require that you cannot accept vaccinations. There are some faiths where that is the case. And if you are a member of that faith and you've been longstanding adherent of that faith, and you can really show your depth of faith and your how much time and effort and how deeply important these beliefs are to you, there's a really good chance in that really rare circumstance that you can get an accommodation for the vaccine. Now, two things are going to happen immediately. Literally hundreds of people watching this video just said, I'll make up a religion that says I can't take a vaccine. Yeah, it's probably not going to work. Everybody always does that. There's really well built out case law on how to address that. That's not a new idea. You're not being clever. That's been going on for 40 years. And no, probably not going to work. Other people who are members of a faith and they believe that faith requires them not to take vaccines, not to utilize vaccines, or people who think their faith, which they're a member of, should require them not to accept a vaccine, but whose faith actually does allow them to take a vaccine, are immediately going to start calling employment attorneys. Hey, my religion says I can't take this vaccine. Okay, great. We'll talk about that. Let's see if we can help you. What's your faith? Oh, that's your faith? Okay, great. Let's look it up. A little bit of research. Oh, the head honchos, the head people who run your faith, prophets, priests, popes, mullahs, whatever faith you might have, right? Rabbis. I mean, I'm missing thousands of different heads of these religions, right? All these heads of these faiths, unless they come out and they say, yeah, core tenet, can't accept vaccines, can't use them, not part of the faith, not allowed. Unless they're clear on that topic, you're probably not going to necessarily have a successful religious exemption. And a whole bunch of faiths that people believe allow them, or require them not to take vaccines, actually have very specific writings saying, no, we think you should take vaccines, or you're free to take vaccines if you want. And if that is a core tenet of your faith that you've been following for a long period of time, it is very unlikely at that point that you will necessarily obtain the religious exemption that you might be seeking, right? Okay, so we chatted about religious exemptions. Now there's also going to be medical exemptions. So there's going to be people who have various conditions, disabilities, that for whatever reason it's unsafe for them to take the vaccine. And these take so many different formats. I'm not going to list them off. Some of the core, there's people who are immune compromised to such an extent that even a vaccine can be risky for them. There's allergies. There are conditions, legitimate medical conditions that you can talk to your doctor about, get a diagnosis, get a letter detailing the reasonable accommodations that you need in order to, work in this job. And one of those could be this individual can't have a vaccine. It's risky for them. Okay. So then that's how the medical exemption could happen. So there's these two kinds of exemptions. Now, I don't want to overstate that these are rare. Like, I think you're going to be dealing with maybe less than 3% of the entire population. The entire workforce of the nation, less than 3% of them are probably going to qualify for an exemption for this vaccine, if employers require it. Okay, so what happens then if you have an exemption for the vaccine? Well, in my experience, even where you have a legitimate exemption for the vaccine, be it religious or medical or otherwise, the employers, whether it's on purpose or not, come up with very onerous requirements for safety because you're not vaccinated, right? They wanted the vaccine for safety purposes. Maybe there's a very good reason why they wanted the vaccine. They might say, listen, you need to be sanitized coming into work. You need to be sanitized leaving work. You need special respirators. You need to wear special full body suit PPE, the highest level masks with custom fittings, and it's going to be sweaty and hot and uncomfortable, and there's a good chance you're going to hate it. But it's probably not retaliation if it's actually something that's suited to responding to the fact that you can't be vaccinated, right? If they're trying to protect someone, whether that's, their patients or your coworkers or children in a school, whoever they're trying to protect, right? if the things they're forcing on you because you can't get the vaccine, because you choose not to get the vaccine, or because of a religious exemption or a medical exemption, as long as they're actually things that are directed at slowing the progression, slowing the transmittal of the disease, those things, no matter how onerous they are, there's a good chance they're not going to be retaliatory, right? So you're going to see a lot of the people who were borderline on whether or not they needed the exemption, right? You know, there's people who are a member of a faith, and they want to follow the faith, and maybe they just happen to get the exemption for the vaccines because of their faith, but that wasn't part of the faith they cared about very much. In my experience, a lot of those people do end up going back and actually getting the vaccine so they can stop wearing the heightened protective clothing, or stop complying with the heightened protective procedures that the employer forces on them, right? So I would not go get the religious exemption for funsies, not to belittle anyone's faith. If it's something you really believe in, then it is your right, and certainly something that you can enforce, but probably not something I would recommend doing, being like, ha ha ha, I don't really believe in this, but I can maybe get away with it. It will probably end up being truly miserable for you. The better question is, how much would you suffer for your faith? Because you probably will, right? I mean, you probably will find that the added procedures, the added protective clothing, and things of that nature are going to be very onerous, and they might make your life more difficult and more uncomfortable. So that is fair warning for people who do not have that really tightly, closely held belief they believe in very much, right? And of course, for the people with the medical exemptions, they don't probably have a choice, right? They, if they can't take the vaccine, well, they don't have many other options. They can't just say one day, I've had enough, I'm going to take the vaccine. Presumably, if they can't take the vaccine is dangerous to them in some way, and so they will have to comply with the added layers of protection. Anyways, I hope this was a fair bit of information for you. I know that a lot of people got really angry about the video about whether or not private employers can require you to wear a mask. So I assume, likewise, people may become very angry about this video. Again, can't stress enough, we're not talking about the government making you get a vaccine. That is a different topic for a different attorney. I am only an employment attorney, only talking about private employers. And we didn't bring out Scrooge McDuck this time, because Scrooge McDuck, as the employer, made everyone just very angry. So I hope you're all staying safe out there and getting back to normal. Take care.